Hi, welcome or welcome back. My name is Brittany, and today I will be tier ranking all the books I read in 2024. This is just chill, cozy. We are just hanging out because I'm in the middle of some night shifts and I'm trying to stay awake. So we're gonna hang out together. It's midnight and I have to work tomorrow. I have to stay up till 7 a.m. Lord help me. I do night shifts sometimes. It's been a while. Last night was rough. I have tonight off. I'm back for some more. So, we're just gonna like hang out and stay awake together. So let's go over to the tier ranking list. I have a pretty good idea of how things are going to be ranked. So we'll just see how crazy I get talking about all the books I read in 2024. I have some caffeine. Grab a drink yourself. Grab a blanket. Like, I'm telling you, we're just hanging out. I am going to just rank this in ascending order. So I'm going to start with the books that were not for me, move up to it was fine. Books that I liked most of, like they were pretty average. I liked most of it. Books that were just fun. Things I really enjoyed, and then books that just really stood out for one reason or another. I will also have timestamps for this, so if you're a cheater like me, when it comes to tier ranking videos, you can just kind of scroll through and see kind of just what I have in these categories instead of like ranking things randomly, because right now I just want people to watch my stuff. So maybe this will entice you to see what I have ranked as my top books for the year. I also just wanted to do a tier ranking. I know a lot of people are doing this right now, but I kind of wanted to do this approach because when I read a book, in that moment, maybe it's really awesome, but maybe it doesn't stay. Or maybe it's just not really impactful, but it was just really fun. I have a hard time with rating books in any capacity, but when I look at everything as a whole, I can see what stands out. Also, I think it's helpful to talk about the books I didn't like, because just because it didn't work for me, it might work for you. And none of the books in the lower tiers are inherently bad. I just didn't like them. So we'll kind of chat about some of those things. What I liked, what I didn't like, why, and yeah. That should keep me up for like at least an hour. So let's just do it. So we are going to start off with the Not For Me. The first book in the Not For Me category is The Library at Mount Char, and this is by Scott Hawkins. This book is recommended a lot if you like weird books, if you like crazy books, darker reads, and that's all fine and dandy. It is very dark. I feel like when it is recommended, that's not emphasized enough. There is animal death, multiple deaths of people. There's a lot of sexual assault in this book. And like the sexual assault stuff is like where this book is just not for me. The overall idea is really interesting. So it's a very disorienting read. You start off this book meeting a bunch of different people that like don't really seem to make sense or go together. Like you're just kind of like hanging on for a lot of this book, and it eventually does come together. We meet Caroline, and she has some like adopted siblings. They're just a group of children who grew up together, and they're raised by this man named Father, and they're all like learning some type of specialty. So Caroline's is language. Another one is talking to animals, like strength, medicine. One of them can talk to the dead or like cross into the realm of the dead. So they all do have something interesting, but what bothers me, the explanation we got for stuff. So this book does wrap up. You do spend a lot of it disoriented, but it does all make sense. I appreciate the story Scott Hawkins created. It is very unique. And at the end, you understand what's going on. It is very unique. It all comes together. But this is where the book lost me, is that one of the excuses and like reasons the sexual assault happened is to create character growth and to make our character stronger. Like it was a strength building trial for them. And I'm like, they could have gone through like any other trials. Like, why did they have to get raped multiple times? Like, I don't think that builds character. I don't think that makes someone stronger or better to go through that experience. Just when that scene happened, like when this thing like is discussed, because the character's like, well, why did this thing happen to me? And it's like, oh, because like I needed to train you and you needed to be strong. And that just like, it just made me feel icky. It just kind of ruined the overall experience because the character's like, oh, okay, sounds good. And it's like, no, like, that's actually not okay at all. So that was my big issue with this book. And yeah, it didn't work for me. I can still appreciate all the other things and the positives, but that was kind of a big no for me. Next up is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Tessa Moshfegh, which is interesting because we'll see another one of her books a lot higher. Really, the main character was insufferable. She made some really bad decisions, and it didn't feel satisfying. Like, all the things she went through, all the things she did, the book just kind of ended, and it was very anticlimactic. It felt like our character didn't learn anything, and I just didn't like it. I just don't like it. This is following a young woman who wants to kind of just sleep for an entire year. She's not necessarily suicidal, but just like wants to check out of life, and she takes like the worst cocktail of medications possible. Like, she's mixing meds left and right, she's drinking, like she's getting like tranquilizers, not just like sedatives, like full-on tranquilizers, benzos, like so many things that like you would honestly probably die if you took. And she just wants to sleep. And like, I don't know, I wanted just like a little more for her. I don't mind morally gray characters and like characters who don't make great decisions, and like that doesn't bother me. I wanted more from her. So that one just didn't really work for me. Next up is Invisible Monsters by Chuck Palahniuk. This is funny because this was one of my friend's like top 5 books of the year. I can't remember where she ranked it, but like it like really stood out for her. This was memorable in a different way. This follows an unnamed main character with a disfiguring like facial injury to where she wears veils, and she meets this woman, Brandy Alexander, and they, along with another man, they go and like rob rich houses, they steal money, they steal pills, and we kind of have this really disjointed timeline to figure out who these people are, what's going on, and why the book opens up with like a standoff and someone getting shot in a burning house. Like, it's a very interesting book, and like I can appreciate like the positives. Like, the book had a really interesting structure. Like, the ending was never something I would have guessed at all, like at all. But it was incredibly like sexual, like graphic, homophobic, like, and just like, wow, there's a lot of stuff I was not expecting. And I don't know, he writes a lot of satire and just crazy things. I don't know if that's my type of weird. I don't know, I felt like I was just kind of hanging on for dear life. I mean, it's not bad. I didn't dislike it. I really like it, but just I think at the end of the day, this was a story that just like wasn't for me. Next up is Interesting Facts About Space by Emily Austen. This follows a young 20-year-old lesbian, and she is like trying to work and deal with complicated relationship with her stepsisters after the passing of her father, and trying to manage her mother's emotions and all of this. She's very anxious, she's very depressed, and then she starts becoming paranoid of bald men. I kind of went on a rant about this in a recent wrap-up, and ultimately this is a character study and a character-focused book of Enid, the main character, and I just didn't like her. I did not like her. I found her really challenging to follow, and I just think it's really our age difference. Like, there's 10 years between us. Like, I've done a lot of therapy. Enid has never been to therapy, and I think it just was frustrating to like watch this, and like, I'm psychoanalyzing her, like, I'm gonna be honest, and I could see all her problems, and it just took her so long to realize what was going on and to like stop making bad decisions that like just perpetuated this chaos in her life. And she just lied a lot, and I'm like, what is going on? It just did not work for me. I didn't like it. So that just, yeah, we're just gonna move on. If you want to see more of my thoughts, you can watch that video. Next up is Brutes by Diz Tate, and this is one of those weird books where it was so weird I don't know what happened. Like, I don't know what I read. Like, I couldn't tell you the plot. And it was one of those books where I'm like, why, like, it was trending on TikTok. I'm like, why does everyone love this? Like, I literally don't know what happened, in a bad way. Like, it's really about a bunch of high school girls, and one of them goes missing, and that's kind of it. but all of these girls are really icky. They're not very kind. We do get an interesting storytelling style where the first chapter, I think, it's kind of like a collective we of all these girls together, and then we get chapters from them in the future, and then we go back in time to figure out what happened to their friend. And like, that's all I like took away from it. I don't know if it's one of those weird books I just need to read again, or if it just like I missed it. I don't know, but I did end that book feeling quite lost and unsatisfied. The last one that just didn't work for me was House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J Maas. I don't know if the series was ever going to work for me. I haven't really been in a romantasy phase in quite some time. I don't like Crescent City. It's urban fantasy, and that's just not my favorite place to be. Like, I just don't really like that setting. Very rarely do I gravitate towards that. The crossover was kind of unsatisfying between her other series. The characters were interesting in that in the first 2 books, it felt like we were really focusing on Bryce and Hunt, but then there's like so many characters, and then it just gets like so convoluted and like ridiculous. I honestly fell asleep like 4 times at the end. I was listening to the audiobook on a vacation, like on the plane, and I kept falling asleep. Just didn't care. So yeah, that one did not work for me. Going on to like, it was fine. It's not good or bad, it's just fine. 1984, but this is the Audible abridged adaptation. I have like vague memories of books like this from school, and none of them are fun. I did not like any school assigned to reading through middle school or high school. And like, I know I read this at one point, but I think it deserves a little more time as an adult. The abridged version was very fun. I mean, you have Tom Hardy, Andrew Garfield, I think. So you have some really fun voice actors with sound effects and music to like bring this to life. It was like a 3-hour audiobook. It's very quick to listen to, but the ending was unsatisfying, and I think that's the point. Like, I think that's the point of the book. But I also just wonder if I just was missing some stuff with it being abridged. I do have the physical copy, so I don't know, it'd be interesting to revisit that again, but I don't know, just like my first kind of like exposure, I guess, again as an adult, which is fine. It was fine. Next up is Pearl by Josh Malerman. This is about a killer telekinetic pig, and I love the idea of that. I just like, I don't know, like some of the writing was weird. Some of like the word choices are just really odd. I can't remember, but you know how like some books have like different like curse words or like expletives, like instead of like, oh hell, it's like trees, or oh buckets, like I don't know, like there's something like weird in this one that I remember, and like it just, I don't know, just like something, we weren't vibing. And let's just chat about incidents around the house, because I also didn't really like this one. So I don't know if Josh Malerman is for me. This one is following Bella, and she's 8-year-old girl. If you do check this out, I would recommend the audiobook because it's narrated in a younger sounding voice, which does definitely like enhance the experience. But Bella is seeing other mommy come out of her closet, and then other mommy starts like haunting her in other places, like outside of the home, and Bella has to tell her parents, and then they have to figure out what to do about other mommy. This just was fine. It was just kind of lacking. I just wanted more. I wanted more build-up, more tension, more hauntings from other mommy before like we get the parents involved. There's a reveal that happens with Bella and her parents, and like some information is shared, and like obviously like for Bella that's a very big deal, but like for me as a reader, it didn't feel that like it was that big of a deal. Like I wasn't invested. I was like, oh, that's the big secret, like blah. Boring. And like, I don't know, I just wanted more, and then the ending was like too ambiguous for me. There are some really interesting discussions on Reddit if you wanted to hear more about that. It just like, I don't know, I just didn't really feel connected enough to like feel invested in this ending and like into the story. Like it had me for a little while, but honestly, I just like, I don't know. I'll give Josh Malerman like one more try, but like, I just haven't really loved his stuff. Next up is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This feels like a hot take. I did not like this book. This is a World War II historical fiction following 2 sisters. They had grown apart, and then the younger sister finds the older sister when her home is getting bombed. The younger sister gets involved in the rebellion, and the older sister is taking care of her child and has a German billet living in her home. And really, like, what just bothered me is there's a romance in here that just was like too insta-lovey. Like, it just, like, it felt kind of stupid, honestly. I'm like, really? Like, you're obsessed with this guy? You met him, like, for 2 seconds. And, like, it was a big part of the story, and I was like, I don't know. It just seemed like too convenient, and then all of a sudden she was in love. And then the younger sister just drove me crazy. Crazy. And this could just be me as an older sister talking. So one of, like, kind of just, like, the just disagreement points between these two sisters is the older sister's like, you need to stop getting involved in the rebellion. Like, I know it's not great having a German in her home, but he's actually kind of nice. It could be a lot worse. And, like, I have a daughter. Like, you have a niece. Like, do you want us to all get fucking killed? Like, simmer down. And the younger sister just, like, is so defiant, is so argumentative with the German and her sister. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I get it, you're patriotic and all, but, like, she just was, like, so disrespectful and, like, endangering her family. I just, like, could not get behind that. And I didn't cry. Honestly, I did not cry. One tear. And, like, the hype was just insane. I was expecting to sob. I didn't cry at all. So, anyways, that one did not work for me. Next up is Krampus. This was, like, fine, and, like, it was fine. Like, it was fine. I think it is more fun to read in the wintertime, but you're basically following Krampus and Santa as they are trying to track down Santa's Christmas sack with presents. It gets lost one night, and they're both looking for it, because technically it's Krampus's. The story is taking place in our world, so it is, like, almost like urban fantasy, which, again, just isn't my favorite. It's just a personal preference. But I did really like all the, like, Christmassy things. Like, when we did get those scenes between Santa and Krampus, that was kind of cool. And then in the back of the book, there was a lot of lore about Yuletide and Krampus and Santa as well. So it was a very unique story. I would still recommend it for the holiday season, but just, like, it was just fine. It was kind of average. Next up was Howl's Moving Castle by Dana Wynne Jones. I love the movie. I love the movie so much. And the book was such a letdown. Howl and Sophie in the book are really strange. Howl was just, like, a completely different character for me, and honestly I just really struggled with the writing style. I don't know, I'd have to reread it, honestly, to find some of those parts that just, like, I thought were weird, but, like, it was just odd, some of the writing, and I just honestly didn't like it. I think the movie's way better. The character work is way better in the movies. The cinematography from the Studio Ghibli film is beautiful. Yeah, just the book was kind of a disappointment. I have not talked about this one yet, and I feel like this is also just kind of a hot take. I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. This is on a lot of people's, like, best books of the year, and I think where this one let me down is the hype and my expectations. So this book is being hyped the hell up as, like, the best book of the year, the best book people have ever read. It's life-changing. They've cried. And I finished the book going, like, huh, like, okay. And, like, that just was a bummer feeling. I want to talk more about this, like, later, but I think this book is explained in a way that at least I thought it was going to be a more exciting story. We are following 40 women who are trapped in a bunker underground, and they are patrolled by guards. They are fed irregularly. They have to, like, use the bathroom, like, in this open caged space in front of each other. Like, there's no privacy, and they've just been there. One of the women actually entered this cage as a child, so that's all she knows is this cage. She has never known men, like, outside of the cage. And the other women have some vague memories of their previous life, but no one knows, like, what happened or why they're there. This younger girl ends up becoming really important and kind of just vital to their survival and potential escape. And when I heard that pitch, like, I was expecting a really wacky story, like, crazy, intense, wild, but it's actually quite slow, or at least felt that way to me. It just was very philosophical, lots of musings, which was fine, but that just was not what I was expecting. I also just think the audiobook maybe just did a disservice to the experience. Not that the narrator is bad, but just I maybe wasn't connected, maybe I didn't sit with the writing enough. I don't know, I'm honestly just confused as to these really positive reviews, because I didn't get that, and then I'm just wondering, like, am I stupid? Like, like, why didn't I like this book? I don't know. I think the other thing that tripped me up is that this is actually a book from 1995, but it had been republished, so all I was seeing was, like, 2022 as like a published date. And so I think that just like a preconceived notion of like what a book from 2022 would be like compared to a book from 1995. I think that also just played into my overall enjoyment along with the hype and then just feeling kind of like meh about it. So I don't know. I think it would maybe be worth a reread to see like physically if I connect different, if I just have a different reading experience with it. But I just was like really bummed. I didn't really like it. It was fine. Next up is Tom Lake by Ian Patchett. And this is narrated by Meryl Streep. I listened to this as an audiobook. And again, it was fine. I liked parts of this story. This is following a mother kind of in her youth, and then she's hanging out with her 3 daughters during COVID. During lockdown, they're like reflecting on her life because she had a relationship with a really famous guy when the mom was young. I think just like the setup of this book was just kind of odd in general because the daughters are obsessed with this story and with the guy that, like the famous guy their mom dated, to the point where like one of them thought he was her dad. Like just like they were almost like weirdly obsessed with this. And then like there just were some weird scenes where like the daughters and the mom were interacting, and the daughters would like interrupt the mom and tell her what she could and couldn't say, to the point where it like broke the story almost. It was very odd. I don't know. It was odd. Meryl Streep did a great job. Like it wasn't, I mean, she has a beautiful voice. That wasn't really the issue. I just found certain parts of this just strange. Just like it was a choice. I will say though that when the mother goes kind of just like back in time and recounts her time at Tom Lake in the theater, like working and acting, like those scenes were so fun. I loved those parts. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I should put this in. I liked most of it. I don't know. But like all the theater stuff I really, really liked. But the rest of it was just like weird. It was just weird. Next up is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. I haven't really enjoyed a lot of Leigh Bardugo stuff. This book is following a maid who has some magical powers, and she ends up getting the attention of like someone close to the king, and then there's a guy, and that's all I remember. This is not a vampire story. I know that that's kind of what it seems like. It's not vampires. I don't know. I just like don't remember any of it. But what I do remember is like finishing the book and being like, whatever. Like, I don't know. Nothing really stood out to me. I don't know. I actually don't remember anything else about this book, but I didn't like it. Next up is Remarkably Bright Creatures. It was fine. This is by Shelby Van Pelt. I would recommend the audiobook for this only because there's an octopus character. He has a voice, and the narrator for the octopus was incredible. Marcellus, the octopus, was the only thing I liked. This follows kind of a couple different people, but one of them is Tova. She's an elderly woman working at an aquarium, and she meets Marcellus. She rescues him after he sneaks out of his cage one night. And then we also follow another plot with this young, actually he's not young, he's in his 30s, but he acts fucking young. We follow this man named Cameron. Honestly, Cameron was just kind of dumb. Like, I didn't really like his character. He just made a lot of really odd choices. He seemed really immature for 30. I'm gonna be 32 this year, and I just like didn't relate to him at all. And then Tova, I think the most frustrating thing about Tova is I think she breaks her ankle, and then she's like, okay, I guess I need to move into an old folks home. I'll sell my house and everything. And I'm like, what? Says who? Says who? Like, that is not a debilitating injury. It's your ankle. Like, that will be fine. Maybe if you like busted a hip and you had a brain bleed, that's a different story, but it's your ankle. Like, she just like gave up really fast, and I just thought that was really odd. I don't know. There's an interesting like crime and like disappearance, and like all these things connect, but overall the only thing I really liked about the story was the octopus. Next up, I feel like this might be a hot take too. I did not really like Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. I sound like an asshole, but I found characters annoying. Everyone's annoying, I'm sorry. I do like things, I swear. Like, I will share positive stuff. Really, this is about Yumi, who is like a religious figure, and then we're following Painter, who, like, in his world, they have to like paint just certain things depending on the type of demon or monster they run into. Two of them end up meeting in a very complicated way. They almost like switch bodies and worlds, and they have to try to manage this and figure out what the heck is going on. I don't know, like, I didn't really connect to the romance. I think I prefer Brandon Sanderson's romance when he's not trying to write romance. I just thought Yumi was kind of annoying. Like, she got really frustrated with Painter, like, all the time. And he's like, I don't know this world. I don't know what's happening. Like, why are you being so frustrated? He's like, mad at me. And oh, then, yeah, Painter had a secret that he didn't tell anybody. And then when the secret comes out, it was like, oh, like, that was it? Like, I don't know. It just seemed kind of anticlimactic for me. The ending was cool. Like, what ends up going on was all very interesting, but just out of all Brandon Sanderson stuff, this just was my least favorite. Next up is Ghosts by Dolly Alderton. This is a very messy just story about a woman trying to date, and she just keeps getting ghosted by people online dating, and she ends up getting ghosted by this one guy who was like, I love you, I'm gonna marry you, and then like, poof, he's gone. We're just gonna kind of see that part of it. She has another friend who's also struggling with dating, and then her father has a lot of dementia, and then her and her mother's relationship is just kind of struggling. Like, it wasn't a bad book, there just were some really odd choices in here that I don't know, I couldn't really get behind. I wouldn't totally write off Dolly Alderton. I don't know, I didn't really love it. It was fine. Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I think this is a personal problem because this is taking place really in an ER with ER physicians, and I work in an ER, and like, you ain't got time to be writing letters to people. Like, you are not writing letters. You better be putting in orders and discharging patients. Like, there's no time for this. I just think I couldn't separate like real world and book world scenarios. But also, okay, let me back up. This is following our two main characters. They're both ER doctors. They have like a really nasty run-in and just like bad first impression, because the guy doctor is new to the hospital, and they're both kind of like vying for the same job, like a director or something. And then they start writing letters and getting to know each other. And then the girl physician, like, her brother needs a kidney transplant, and like, the guy might be a match, like, and then they fall in love, blah, 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 blah. It's all fine. Just the ER stuff, I don't know, it was not realistic for me. Their hookup scene, like their first hookup scene, was at a fucking party, like downstairs with his family upstairs. Like, I don't know, it was really bizarre. Like, I don't know what I read, but it was really weird. It was like well established that the main guy, like the guy character, had a lot of anxiety, and at first the girl was like really in tune and they were always talking, and then she just like forgets he's a super anxious fella, and that leads to a lot of miscommunication. So I've read one other Abby Jimenez, and like, again, it was fine. I don't know, I just don't know if I can read ER stuff because it wasn't realistic. Also, like, the way they go about the kidney donation thing is like illegal. You can't just like call up your urology buddy and be like, hey, can you like see if I'm a match for this guy? No, like, there's a process. You can't just be a donor. Anyways, okay, I have to move on. This one is just a short story, The Grownup by Gillian Flynn. I don't remember anything about this, but I remember thinking it was fine when I listened to it. Next up is Perfume by Patrick Suskind. I love the idea of this, and I love the movie. The movie is incredible. I think the cinematography is beautiful. I think, like, again, it just does so much justice to the story, and it fixes all my problems with the book. This is following a man, Jean-Baptiste Grandouille, and he basically just has this excellent scent of smell. He has a very difficult life, and ultimately he ends up working for a perfumist. He has been really obsessed with just smells, right? And once he learns the trade of perfume, this obsession just escalates to the point where he starts killing women to try to capture like the most pure virginal scent. And like, it just goes fucking wild from there. Like, especially the movie was so good. The book's pacing was just way too slow. Like, it's a pretty short book, maybe 260 pages or something, and it felt so long. Like, it kind of slogged at points. Like, it just kind of lost me, but the book or the movie just like really fixes that and picked up the pace. So I 100%, hands down, the movie was so good and the book was average. It was fine. Next up is As Good as Dead. This is the third book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. I didn't like the conclusion. I did not like what happened in this book. I rant about this in a different video too if you want to know more, but I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I will talk more about this series because I have the other two books on here, so when I talk about those, I'll just bring that up again and let you know what the series is about, but the ending just didn't work for me. Next up is Sunreach. This is one of the Skyward Flight novellas, and this was fine. I don't really remember it, but it was fine. It was fine. I have to restart that series again if I'm gonna ever finish that, because I don't remember those novellas. Next up, this is Warrior Girl Unearthed by Angeline Boulley, and this is kind of the second book to My Daughter the Firekeeper, or The Firekeeper's Daughter, that's what it is. And I really loved, I read that last year, I think. I loved Firekeeper's Daughter. This one was fine. It follows her niece, I think, like from the first book. This is the second book. The main character had aged up, and this is her niece we're following. And like, I don't know, it just was a totally different story, different cast of characters. Like, it was fine. I like that first book a lot better. Daughter of No Worlds. This is by Chris Broadbent. This is following, oh god, what was this about? Come on, brain. This is following our female main character. She was like an orphan of war, and then she really wants to be not a scholar, like a seeker, like someone. She wants to like join this group of people to like then go and fight and try to see if there's anyone left from her hometown, even though like 20 years have gone by. Oh, and she was a slave for quite some time too. And then she meets this guy Max, who used to be this like thing she's trying to be, and he ends up training her to accomplish this, and then they go off to war, romance, fantasy things occur. That's kind of all I remember. I think the audiobook did me a little bit disservice, only because the way Max was described initially, I thought he was some old guy. Like, I did not realize he was our love interest, and then when they start like having feelings for each other, I'm like, ew, gross. Like, he's like 70. And I'm like, oh my god, no, he's not. Like, I don't know where I was listening to this book, but ultimately it just did not work for me. So, yeah, it was fine. I have some questions for you by Rebecca Mackay. Again, it was fine. This is kind of like a crime-based story. This woman has gone back to, I think, a prep school she had used to go to teach a podcast class, and then do her own podcast about a crime, and that's it. That's all I got. It was fine. Clearly didn't stick out. Piranesi, I don't like this very much. I think this is a case very similar to I Who Have Never Known Men, where the hype got to me and it let me down. It let me down. First off, you are following a human main character, not the little guy that's on the cover. You are following this guy named Piranesi, and he is in this different world, essentially, where there's like there's coliseums and like grand pillars and statues, and like the ocean is actually like going through this building, and then he meets this person called the Other a couple times a week, and they talk about science, and Piranesi has all these journals to keep track of things, and you kind of just figure out what's going on. I felt like we figured out, like, we were literally told what was happening in like the second part. Like, we as a reader know what's going on like way before Piranesi does, and then Piranesi spends the rest of the book trying to figure it out, and it was really painful. And it's described as fantasy, but I would almost say sci-fi. Like, it's not fantasy in the traditional sense. I know, like, a lot of people like the writing, they love Piranesi because he's so wholesome, but like, I would think he's more wholesome if he was like the little goat creature, so personally. I was disappointed to learn he was a human. Fairy Tale by Stephen King. It's kind of a bummer. I really liked the first part of this book. We get a lot of really great character work with Charlie, who's our main character. He is a high school boy or had just graduated, and he is helping take care of Mr. Bowditch and his dog Radar after he has an accident. And he's like the town curmudgeon, like, don't go to Mr. Bowditch's house, like, he'll yell at you. And Charlie is just like the sweetest young man. He is so kind. He's so caring. Mr. Bowditch, though, has a secret in his shed to a fairy tale realm, and an adventure just kind of sets off from there. Once we enter the fairy tale realm, though, we just lose a lot of that really good character work that I loved. So, like, I don't know. Like, it was fine. I just really liked Charlie, Radar, Mr. Bowditch at the beginning. That was really it. I started Lord of the Rings. I've gotten through The Fellowship of the Ring and The Two Towers, and like, I liked it. I've liked most of it. I don't know. I've had some confusing thoughts about this. I've honestly felt pretty disconnected from the story. I've done the first two books in audiobook, and I don't know if maybe I need to read it physically or like watch the movies and then listen. Like, I don't know, but I'm just feeling pretty disconnected. I thought The Two Towers was a little bit better and like just more fast-paced, more action, but I also switched audiobook narrators in between. So, I don't know. I'm still kind of like processing how I feel, but I've liked it so far. Like, it's been fine. Motherhood by Sheila Heti. This is actually kind of more of a memoir about her processing motherhood and if this is the right choice for her. I liked most of it. It had some interesting themes. Like if you're wondering if motherhood is right for you, I think you would like this. She ultimately decides to be child free, but she does bounce around a lot of different ideas and thoughts, and I think you would take something away from it no matter how you were feeling, so I did like it. The Unmothers, this is by Leslie J. Anderson, and this is like a folk mystery horror featuring a small town. So our main character is a journalist. She gets sent to Rayford to investigate the claim that a horse had given birth to a healthy human baby boy. But when she gets there, she witnesses the murder of 2 people and a couple horses and learns there's something a lot more sinister going on in this small town. I liked most of it. There's a lot more point of views than I was expecting. Maybe a little slow at times, but overall for a debut, I thought it was like pretty fun. I did like it, and I'll definitely be keeping my eye out for other stuff she writes. Next up is Big Swiss by Jen Began. Oh, did I even tell you? I liked most of it. I liked it. Anyways, this is following our main character, and she is a transcriptionist for a sex therapist, and she hears this woman who she names Big Swiss like frequently in the sessions, and then she hears her voice like in real life, like out in the world, and like approaches her, talks to her, and like enters a relationship with this woman. Big Swiss doesn't know that our main character has been listening to her personal sex life for years. They're very messy. It's very chaotic. It's kind of weird at times too. Like I liked most of it. Not my favorite, but it was kind of entertaining listening to the train wreck that is their lives. Next up is Changing All-Stars. This is by Nana Kwame Ejibrinya. I love the world he created. I love the idea. I just didn't love the execution of it. So this is taking place in the future where criminals in the prison system can either finish out their prison sentence in like experimental prisons and they face really harsh conditions, like they're literally getting experimented on, or they enter Chain Gang All-Stars, which is basically like football, or like, it's like a sporting event where they fight gladiator style to the death. Like they literally die. If they survive 3 years on this fighting circuit, they get total freedom. We are following 2 female main characters who are on the same chain, the same team, and we get their backstories, but we also just get lots of little stories from other people, and there's footnotes. That's where it honestly lost me. I just think I wanted more from our 2 main female characters, but the footnotes and a lot of those little stories just kind of took me out of the overall story I was experiencing. It feels like he did that to just highlight as many examples of injustice in the prison system, especially towards Black people. But I've read a few other books with footnotes, and I haven't really found a story that has done it in a way that feels cohesive. So overall, I did like it, just not the footnotes. This is The Girls by Emma Cline, and this is following a young lady who ends up running away from home, and she joins a cult. And yeah, I liked it. I think this was inspired by the Manson murders, Manson cult. Yeah, it was pretty tough to read at times. Just how some of these girls, how their brain works, some things they go through, it was pretty awful. But I did overall like it. I liked Emma Cline's writing. I'm definitely interested to check out her other stuff. So I wouldn't, it's hard to say it was fun, but maybe it was a little fun. Next up is The Warm Hands of Ghosts. This is by Catherine Arden, and this is a magical realism story, World War I, I think. We are following a war nurse who gets sent home, and then her brother, it appears that he died during battle, because she gets sent his stuff, but something's not right. She doesn't really think he's dead, and she goes back into the war zone to try to find her brother. She takes another job as a nurse and is on my off time I'll search for him. We get a really cool back and forth story between our main female character and her brother. We get to see what happened to him, why he was missing, and then the sister searching for him. I did like it. I do want to check out Catherine Arden's other stuff. It also just was a really interesting look at World War I and some of the horrors, and taking just maybe a magical spin on what hell would look like in the trenches and in the battle zone, So definitely interesting. I did like it. Next up is Thistlefoot by Geneva Rose Nethercott. God, I read this a while ago now. But this is following two siblings, and they have a house on chicken legs. And that's kind of all I remember. I remember liking it when I read it and having fun. There's a lot of cool lore, like Baba Yaga is mentioned, like some of that stuff. Just some interesting history. And that's all I got right now, because it's almost 1 a.m. We are crushing it. Next up is The Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher, and this is following Cordelia, and she's 14. Her mother is a sorceress, and her mother develops a scheme to, like, try to get married and status, and, like, she's trying to find a rich guy, and they end up stumbling across this guy's house, manor, all according to a scheme her mother set up. And then we meet Hester, the sister of the manor owner, and she's like, yeah, no, like, I know something's up here. And so we get a back and forth between Cordelia and Hester as, you know, kind of like intentions and like schemes are revealed, but also like how are they going to deal with Cordelia's sorceress mom, because she's very dangerous. This is not my favorite T. Kingfisher, but I did like enjoy it overall. Like, it was fun when I was reading it, but kind of slow. Like, I don't know, like, I liked it well enough. The next one's The Crane Husband by Kelly Barnhill. This is a really short novella, and this is kind of cool. It's got some magical realism to where you like don't really know what's happening. But this is following a young girl, and her mother's an artist. The dad had died quite some time ago. The girl is taking care of her younger brother, and the mom is just, she'll get really sucked into her art. She'll get really sucked into relationships and gets like, kind of just chooses bad relationships. Bad partners get brought into the home, and then one day she comes home with a crane husband, like a literal crane. But it is also just a metaphor for like domestic violence and like how that would be being a child in a situation like that. So very interesting. I liked how that was done. I mean, I liked it. I wouldn't say it was a new favorite, but I did enjoy it, and I would recommend if you're looking for something like that. The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is a mystery following the Vanlar family. So their son disappeared when he was, maybe 6, like he was kind of a little boy. And then we kind of flash forward. Their daughter Barbara is now like 13, she's at summer camp, and she disappears. So we get to figure out what happened to both of Vanlar children. I don't know, it was like fine when I was listening to it. I don't know if I loved the ending or just kind of like what like happened and why it happened, but like overall I liked it, and I would recommend if you're looking for some kind of thriller or just like mystery about like trying to figure things out. It takes place in autumn or like August, and there's like summer camp vibes, so, and like forest stuff. You have like a rich bougie family, so it's like all those vibes are really fun. Just, it was good. I liked it. Next up is Shark Heart, and this is by Emily Haybeck. This is following a married couple, and the husband gets a fatal diagnosis of turning into a shark. I did like how it took in aspects of playwriting and just like scripts, because Lewis, I think is his name, main character, the one who turns into a shark, he's very interested in plays and theater. He's a theater teacher. And then his wife, Ren, I think that's right. She's like, they're both just grappling with this loss, really, because he's going to turn into a shark. There's nothing you can do. And then we also learn about Ren's mom growing up, which is interesting. I guess I didn't love like the way the story was structured, but like overall it was a really cool story, a really unique world. Like just the parallels between like some kind of chronic, not even a chronic illness, but like basically like a death sentence, like dementia or cancer, or like something that like is incurable, and like how the person would navigate that, and also the loved ones too. So definitely interesting. Actually, did I like most of this? I actually think this was fine. The It Girl by Ruth Ware. This takes place at a fancy college. One of the girls' roommates gets murdered, and are kind of going back in time to figure out like then and now, like how she's coping now, but also we go in the past to figure out what happened. I just think maybe the oddest thing for me is just like she was so obsessed with this case, like even like 15 years later or something. That's all that really sticks out as far as like maybe why it was just kind of fine. I think I just struggle with like thrillers in general because they just seem so wacky and crazy, and I don't know. It was fine. Okay, I also just think the Kingdom of Sweets was kind of fine. No, I don't know. I did like some parts of it though. Okay, we'll leave it there. This is by Erica Johansson. This is a Nutcracker inspired story. This is not a retelling of the Nutcracker. The Nutcracker stuff dips off pretty fast. This is following two sisters. They are blessed as infants one Christmas evening by Drosselmeyer, like the town magician, like the town weirdo. I don't know. He just like shows up at their house at a Christmas party. One is dubbed light, one is dubbed dark, and then like these sisters do kind of grow up like kind of against each other because of that. It really just kind of puts like a wedge between them. I liked the writing, I liked how dark it was, and then the ending kind of lost me. Well, maybe I didn't. Maybe it was just fine. Oh god, now I can't. I'm starting to lose brain cells. But yeah, it was fine. I think if you do want just like a Christmas read though, like it was fun for Christmas time. The Fox and I, An Uncommon Friendship by Catherine Raven is a memoir, and I just really like animal-based stories. She ends up, I can't remember, she's like I don't know, she works outdoors, and she ends up living at this cabin and like meets a fox, and they just have like a really sweet and interesting relationship, and that's all I remember. But I remember liking it when I listened. Foul Days by Geneva Dimova. This is a story that takes place over New Year's, where every New Year's in this town, the veil between like the monsters and like humans is thinned, and so there's like 12 days, the Foul Days, where monsters just like run rampant. And we're following a main character who's a witch, and in order to kind of like escape some danger, she ends up giving up her shadow, which is very dangerous for witches, and then she finds herself on the other side of this wall that separates two different towns where there's no monsters, like everything's beautiful and people are thriving, and then she finds herself in a murder investigation. I liked most of it. There's a few just like critiques, but overall like it was fun to read over New Year's if you're looking for something like that. Looking Glass Sound by Catriona Ward. This is following Wilder Harlow, and he is about to write the last story he will ever write. We basically just follow him like in present time, but then also flashing back as he visits this cabin. Like he used to visit this cabin or this like seaside house as a child, and now he's back as an adult, and we get to just figure out kind of like what happened, like when he was a kid, why did he leave, like why is he back as an adult, like what's going on. I don't know, Catriona Ward just writes like really wacky stories, and I did enjoy the experience as I was reading. All the Fragile Hearts by M.T. Solomon. This is a fantasy romance duology, and that's all I really remember, unfortunately. I read this in like January of 2024. I remember just liking the experience, liking the story. I got to meet the author at a local book club, which was fun. So if you do need a romantasy, just like please check this out and look it up, because I got nothing left. Okay, moving on to It Was Just Fun. It was just fun. It's not that serious. It was just fun. I do think A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is fun. Okay, here's the other one. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder and Good Girl Bad Blood. They're just fun. This is following Pippa, and she is doing a podcast for her senior project investigating the murder-suicide of Sal Singh and Andy Bell. In the second book, we kind of follow a different case. One of her like friends' brother is missing, and she's looking into that. And then in the third book, a lot of things wrap up, like connecting the books, and we do get closure on just everything. But the third book that's where it lost me. But overall, like, even though I didn't really like that third book, I think this is a really fun series. Like, it's entertaining. It's entertaining. Like, it's engaging to listen to. It's just wacky enough. The characters are pretty likable, except in the third book. And it's a really fun audiobook listen. Like, if you need an audiobook, I would definitely recommend this as an audiobook. Okay, I am going to be honest, I don't think I read The Grace of Kings in 2024, but it's on here, and we're just going to chat about it real quick. I don't know. I just thought this was fun. Oh my goodness. Oh, we're hitting a wall. Whew. This is like a historical fantasy, almost, following it, actually just heavily inspired by the Han Dynasty in China. I liked a lot of the characters, I liked the world, I just haven't kept up or continued with the series, but I did enjoy it. I had a lot of fun when I was listening. Next up is Mostly Dead Things by Kristen Arnett. This book was weird, but when I think about it, still, I had fun. I just had fun reading it because it was so weird and gross. But this is following our main character. Her father committed suicide, so that's like very present in the book, and he was like a really good taxidermist. And there's a lot of taxidermy in this book too. She is really just struggling with obviously his loss, the death, like how that ripples through the family, how to keep up with the business. Her mom is struggling a lot. Like her mom has sunk into like a really dark place, but she's also like making lewd sexual art with the taxidermy, and the main character's like, what the fuck are you doing? And then the main character was also like sleeping with her brother's wife. Like, it was all very messy, it was all very weird, but I just had a lot of fun with it when it was happening. Next up is Funny Story by Emily Henry. This is following a librarian. Her and her fiance break up because he like is still in love with his childhood best friend. We basically have like two couples that split up, and like the ones who aren't together need a place to live. They move in together and they go from like acquaintances to lovers. Daphne's a librarian. Max? Is that his name? Sure, Max. Works at a restaurant. He's a bartender. I don't know, like it was fun when I read it. Clearly not a lot is sticking right now, but I just always have fun with Emily Henry. It's like really not that serious. It's just a fun time, and I always enjoy the audiobooks because they're narrated by Julia Whalen. Love those. Next up is Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. This is about a young married couple. They are maybe 8 months postpartum, and the wife has suffered like a paralyzing injury from childbirth. They win a lottery to get a new home in like a Manhattan high-rise on the top floor, and they take advantage of it. They're trying to get out of a bad living situation. They want a fresh start after all this trauma, like birth trauma, like adapting to life, and like just raising the child, like all of this stuff. And once they move in, their happy-go-lucky child like totally changes. She's cranky, she's inconsolable, and there's bite marks all over her, and like the vibes in this apartment complex are great. It's creepy, it was weird. I had fun. It was great. Oh, the next up is The Har. I had so much fun with this one. This is by David Sattergren, and this is following Muriel. She's an older woman, and her little like seaside cottage town is being taken over by like rich developers, and like everyone is like selling their home, and her and a few other people are like holding out. They're basically getting harassed by this corporation, and then one day she finds this blob on the beach. She brings him home, and the blob can do a lot more than you would think. This book is gross. It's like violent and bloody and awesome. And also, like, I would argue it's a love story. I don't know. It was just really fun. It was so weird. It was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. Maybe I really enjoyed it. Whatever. Next up is Bride by Ellie Hazelwood. It's a werewolf romance. A werewolf and vampire. I think my only critique is it like wasn't like vampire or like Halloween enough. Like it didn't really lean into that much. But basically you have a vampire, and she like agrees to marry a wolf for like alliances and stuff. And then she's also just trying to track down her best friend, and she thinks that she might be in the wolf realm. Yeah, like it was just fun. It was just a silly fun time. Really not that serious. I will say, if you've never read a werewolf romance, just be aware. Werewolves have different anatomy in the bedroom, so it was fun. Next up, The Vegetarian by Hong Kang. This is following a woman who has a very bad graphic dream and decides the next day to not eat meat anymore. And we're following her husband, her brother-in-law, and sister. We don't actually get her point of view. We're following these three people and how her choice has affected them. It's very interesting, very gross, very weird. I just had fun listening to it because it was so weird. The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. This is following a young writer, and she basically wins a chance to go to this author's house, and kind of just in like a competition style. All of these women have to write a novel within 30 days. And if they win, they get backed by, is it Rosa Vallo is the author who's putting this on? They basically get backed by her. They get to go on a tour. Like, it's like you're guaranteed success if you win. And so these women start trying to write their novel and weird things start happening. This is like, it's obviously not realistic, but just like the way Rosa Vallow is described, this author, the vibes of the house, just the way things shake out was all very atmospheric. Like, I just could picture the author just like in such a specific way. Like, I don't know, it was fun, it was wacky, I enjoyed it. Next up is Belladonna. This is by Adeline Grace. This is following our main character Signa, and she essentially has been followed by death her entire life. Everyone, all her guardians keep dying, and so she's on her last guardian, and she has to have a guardian turn like 20 or something, so then she can get her inheritance. That was like left over from her parents passing away. When she meets her last guardian, the daughter is on her deathbed. She's very, very sick. The man of the house is like drinking and spiraling and not taking care of the business. His son is like dying to take over the business, but he won't let him. And then she learns the wife died recently, and she's like, oh my god, like, I like these people, I need a guardian, and I need to figure out what to do, try to help them so I can like just save them. I'm tired of people dying, but also like get my inheritance, and like they seem nice. We also meet Death, like he is a character in this book, and that was a lot of fun. And yeah, it just was fun. It was fun. The Will of the Money by James Islington. This is a new fantasy story. We're hopefully gonna get a sequel this year, maybe. But this is following Viz, our main character. I don't remember anyone's names right now. He basically is like put in between a rebel group and a really powerful political figure. They both want something from him, and they put him in this school, try to like advance the magic in the world, which is the will. And then like wacky stuff happens in the very, very end. It was really cool and really fucking weird. And that's all I got. That's all I got for you. It was fun. The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This is following a caretaker. And this actually gives me like a little bit of Verity vibes, only in that you have like someone disabled in the home, but it's like, are they disabled? Are they like creeping around at night? Like that vibe you got from Verity. That's a little present in here. So a caretaker moves in to this home, and the person she's taking care of was like implicated in some murders like years and years ago. You have this crumbling house. You have this like nonverbal kind of creepy person you're taking care of. Lots of secrets in this place, and yeah, like it does get a little too wacky at the end, but like overall it was very fun, and like I think it was just extra fun. I read this in Mexico, so I don't know, like it wasn't too bad. It was a good time. The Snow Child by Ewan Ivey. This is about a family who homesteads in Alaska, and they've suffered child loss. They desperately want a child but can't have one, and they make a snowman one evening, and then they start seeing a little girl running around. And it just was a really fun story. I just really enjoyed it. It was perfect to read in the winter. It was very sad. If you've experienced child loss or just that kind of thing, I think you would really connect to the story. So it just was very nice. I enjoyed it. Like, it was fun even though I cried. The Empire of Silence by Christopher Rucchio. This is the first book in the Sun Eater series. I couldn't tell you anything about what happened right now, but I did like it. Basically, our main character has been lauded as like the hero and the villain. And so it's like, which one is he? Like, I think we get his story throughout the years and eventually get to the answer of like, is he the hero or is he the villain? I don't know. Next up is Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. This book is not serious. This is just a silly good time. That's why this is fun. It was just fun. But basically this story is about two serial killers who fall in love and have a romance. And it's about as ridiculous as you would expect, but I had a good time listening to it if you just need like a fun, gross, lighthearted listen. This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno. I think this is a book that would be really interesting on reread. I enjoyed it when I was reading it for the first time, but there's a couple things where I was confused about, but overall, like, it was still pretty fun. This is following Thiago, I think is his name, and his wife Vera has died, and it's really a look at grief and just what that feels like. He ultimately decides to move away from his home, just kind of have like a fresh start at this cabin in the woods, but something was haunting him in his home, and it has followed him to this cabin. So I thought it was pretty fun. Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. I really liked the audiobook for this one. So this is following a married couple, and they go to this like remote cabin as like kind of like a last trip to save their marriage. And the story is told in his and her perspectives. And then we also get love letters that were written on their anniversary. And it was just so fun to like hear their back and forth, and you're like, wow, like they fucking hate each other, like this marriage is not going to survive. And then you read these anniversary letters and you're like, how did they get here? Like how did they go from this loving marriage to like hating their guts? Like what is going on? And when you figure out what's going on, it's actually very wacky and very crazy, and it was just a very entertaining listen. I think the last one for It Was Just Fun is The Women by Kristen Hanna. Even though this is a very tragic book, it was fun. Like, I enjoyed it. This is following Frankie, I think is her name. She goes to Vietnam to be a nurse, to follow her brother's footsteps, and we basically just follow her and her time over in Vietnam as a nurse, and then what that is like coming back and struggling with PTSD. Like, Kristen Hanna put Frankie through the fucking trenches, like literally, in war and after. And it just was so sad to see her spiral and struggle and like try to get better, but man, oh man, it was a really good read. Maybe I really enjoyed this one. Okay, I really enjoyed it. These books are ones that definitely stick out as like ones I really enjoyed. I had a lot of fun listening to or reading. I'm gonna put The Mad Ship up here. This is by Robin Hobb. Let me put, where's the other one? Oh, okay. Ship of Magic. And I might have to talk about these two categories together. So this is actually the second series in her Realm of the Elderlings, the Life Ship Traders series, and it starts with Mad Ship, Ship of Magic, and then Ship of Destiny. And this is following really the Vestrit family, mother, daughters, son-in-law. We follow a pirate, we follow a priest. Like, we get to follow so many fun people in this book, and basically their like family, how they thrive, how they use these live ships, which are like have like talking figureheads, like the ship is alive. It's really fun. I really enjoyed the first two books in the trilogy, but the third book like was an experience. The character work in this series is incredible. Like, I've never experienced something like that before. There was one character I just was really annoyed by, really frustrated by. Like, I did not like them in the first book, and by the end I was like, wow, you might be my favorite. And there's another character who's like arguably like not a very good person, but you see their life, what they go through, like you have a lot of empathy, but they do a lot of bad stuff, but they're also doing good. She just captured humanity so well, and I just think this like third and final book was just like perfectly done. Like, the character work was so good. I was talking like a pirate for weeks. I mean, it was such a good time. I loved it. The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. I really enjoyed this book. This is following her main character, Lauren, and she leaves the night to go out to a dinner with some friends, like single, unmarried, like happy in her life, and she returns home to find a husband, like in the house. This guy she's apparently married to. Decorations are different, her life is different, and she's like, what the fuck is going on? Oh, what is happening? She's obviously freaked out, like it doesn't go well. He goes into the attic and comes down a different husband. And she quickly learns that anytime a husband goes up into the attic, a new one comes down. I thought this was really interesting, especially if you enjoy just the idea of different lives or like different life paths, because every husband is like kind of within her reach. Like, they're all very realistic people she could have been with, but like her career changes, her friendships change, like family changes, and so she really gets to investigate through all these husbands, like what she finds important in life, what she wants for herself, what she wants in a partner, but then also like what the hell to do, because this doesn't seem to be stopping. And I just felt like it was a really realistic approach to like how someone would approach this, because at first she's like freaked out, like this is so scary, what is going on? And then after a while she's like, well, that one's ugly, let's get a new one. Or like, he's kind of a dick, like, honey, can you get something from the attic? Like, let's try again. So she does kind of go through husbands, and then she finds herself in some trouble. And like I said, ultimately she has to figure out how to stop this, like what to do. And I just really enjoyed how that story went. Next up is Baby X by Kiera Peikoff. I talked about this a little bit in a recent book haul. This is set in a future where you can create embryos from like cheek cells. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a man or woman, like you could swab my cheek and make sperm. That would be my sperm. Like, it's very cool technology. And you don't like have sex and make babies anymore. You create your embryos, they get tested, they get essentially like pitted against one another, and you pick the best one. And then this technology can also be used to, like, you can steal people's DNA and like have a baby from your celebrity, and it would be like their child biologically. It's their DNA, it'd be their child. So we follow this woman who's pregnant, and she approaches this couple and is like, hey, like, I think I have your kid. Which is not good. This is like really bad news for the couple. Then we follow a third character who is a journalist. She's trying to kind of make it big. Her mother is 60 and like starting the selection process to conceive and like pick their embryo, and like it is all very interesting. The science and ethics of everything was so fun. This is gonna sound really dumb, but as I was listening to this story, I was like, oh, like there's science fiction, like space, aliens, intergalactic battles, right? But then there's science fiction, like science. And that's what this is. And I just thought the science part of it was so cool. I really liked it. Next up is Mary by Nat Cassidy. This is following a 40-something-year-old woman, and everyone keeps telling her she's going through menopause, but she like hallucinates when she looks in a mirror. She passes out, and that's not typical menopause, right? She ends up getting called by her Aunt Nadine, who's a bitch. Her Aunt Nadine is like so mean, but like one of my favorite people ever. Because like when you first meet her and you're like, I would not take care of you. And then Aunt Nadine has a dog named Chipotle, but she calls her Chipotle. It's so funny. Mary goes back to take care of her aunt, and like her symptoms, like the hallucinations, get worse. She starts like auto-writing these like really fucked up things, and then she has like these violent flashes of like injuring people, and then people are like ending up dead in town. And there's like something sinister happened like years ago in a small town. Like, it was so fucking weird, but I had a lot of fun with Mary. It was maybe a little too long, but like overall it was a really fun time. I like this a lot. Nat Cassidy is like definitely one to watch for me. Next up is Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. This is following Annie, and she is a sex robot, like an AI sex doll. In this world, you can have a nanny, pleasure doll, or Abigail who cleans the house, like a homemaker, someone who takes care of your home, whatever. Annie was, I think she was an Abigail taking care of the home, but her owner upgraded her, so now she is an Annie and like pleases him in every way, shape, and form. I think this is such an interesting story. This really does parallel a domestic relationship, even though she's a robot, but also just like, I think it brings up the ethics of like how you treat inanimate things. Like, I mean, AI is wild, right? But like if we actually had robots, like her owner is awful to her. Like, he's the worst. Some of the things he does is just horrendous. Like, he gaslights her, he's argumentative, like he punishes her, like it's really fucked up. But overall, like I really enjoyed this story. I think learning about Annie and her journey was super fun, and just like she gets like the ending she deserves, and I don't know, it was a really fun time. I really enjoyed this a lot. Next up is The Whalebone Theater by Joanna Quinn. This is a World War II historical fiction, but I would say the World War II stuff comes kind of later. It's not really the focus. The focus is on Christabel. When she's a child, she lives in this manor with her siblings, and they just have so much fun together. Like learning about all these kids, just like running around, having fun, playing make-believe, like acting out stories, like they're fighting and they're going to battles and stuff. And then they come across like a whale carcass on the beach, and they end up taking the bones from that and turning it into a theater. And then her mom, or is it her stepmom, has this group of like really eclectic group of friends, like these adult friends that are so fun, and just like the kids and these adults, like it's just such a fun group of people that get together and live this theater life. They're just so passionate about theater, and like, oh man, like some of the arcs in this were just so beautiful. Like there's one that made me cry. It was so sweet. Oh my god. I just really liked it. I think the audiobook narrator has such a beautiful voice for this. I do really like theater stories, and so there's a lot of really fun theater stuff in here. art and just like beautiful moments. I just really enjoyed this one. Next up is The Ministry of Time by Kellyanne Bradley. This follows our main character, who remains unnamed, which is actually pretty interesting. And she is a bridge for Commander Graham Gore. And he was like pulled from the 1800s into today's time. And our main character is supposed to like bridge him or like help him acclimate to current times. There's time travel, there's a romance. Like, I thought there were some really fun twists at the end. I thought the writing was beautiful. There's talks of just like racism and heritage, and I don't know, I just like really enjoyed this. I thought this was a great time. I really enjoyed The Justice of Kings and The Tyranny of Faith. I have got to finish this series this year, and this is ridiculous. This is by Richard Swan, and this is following the life of Sir Conrad von Valt from his apprentice Helena's point of view. This is set in like a pretty grim world, and he's a justice. Justices have like a ton of power. Like judge, jury, executioner, police, they investigate like all in one. Richard Swan also has a law background, and that like just really shines through with a lot of the story. It kind of starts off with them investigating a murder of someone important. And then like the church gets involved, like there's way bigger schemes, like there's a lot going on in this story, and I just really love the first two books. I don't know, I haven't finished it. I need to, because I thought this was really amazing for a fantasy series and a debut. It's incredible. Next up is The Murmur of Bees by Sofia Segovia. This is translated from Spanish, and this is following Simona Pio. Wow, I read this like in February of last year. We're following this boy who's disfigured, and he is swarmed by bees, like actual bees, and he gets taken in by this family. It's really just like a generational story of like them taking him in, but also their lives, how they survive in Mexico. They survive a war, plague, like just a bunch of hardships. He ends up being really good friends with one of the sons of the family. And like, it just was so beautiful. It was so lovely. I read a different Sofia Segovia book, and she's just an incredible author. Like, she tells some beautiful stories. Next up is Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. I just thought this was really fun. I really enjoyed this. It was funny. It was a great time. This is following, why do I want to say Valhalla? I don't know if that's her name. I'm sorry. This is following our main female character, and the book opens up with her trying to kill herself, which I know is not funny, but it's very funny because her like great uncle died, and his wife and her cousin have locked her upstairs because they want her to marry the cousin. So like the inheritance that she got when the uncle person died, like she got everything. Like he gifted her everything, and so they're trying to like force her into this marriage so they can stay rich. And she's like, I'm not freaking marrying you. So she's like, oh my god, I'm so tired. She's in her room and she's trying to figure out how to kill herself, because she's like, well, if I fall and I don't die, then they have to take care of me. Break my legs. Then she like whips out this sword. She's like, well, I guess I could stab myself. But like, how do I stab myself? Like, it's like too long. So she like unsheathes the sword, and this man named Sarkis jumps out, and he's like, I'll protect you, my lady. And he ends up helping her escape, and they have to kind of go across country to get the law involved, the Church of the Rat, I think, in order to like get her inheritance back, because these people are crazy. And it was just so fun. Our main female character is in her 30s. Like, it's a very sweet romance. It's a traveling story. Like, the world is really cool. I just had a lot of fun listening to this book. I really enjoyed it. Next up is The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. And this is following our main character, Beatrice. And she has left her home. This is taking place during this Mexican Revolution. Her father died. Like, they don't have any money. And so she kind of just enters this marriage of convenience because he's rich. And she needs a place to stay. She needs to support her mom. She gets married to this guy. They move to his house, and his sister and like everyone else in the house like hates our main character like, immediately upon arrival. And the house is clearly haunted. This book was so fun. I also read this in Mexico. I'm definitely partial to it, but the vibes, like these gothic vibes, there's an exorcism, there's a priest, like there's a forbidden romance, like there's so many fun parts to this story, and I just loved every second of it. It was so fun. Next up is Chouette. This is by Claire Oshetsky, and this is following Tiny, and she like was pregnant and has given birth to a baby owl. It's so wild. It's a book very heavy in metaphor, and so you don't know, like, is this an owl baby, or is this like maybe symbolism for a disabled child or something? Like, it's a very interesting read, but it was a really beautiful look at motherhood and like challenging children. I don't know, I really enjoyed this one a lot. Next up is Starsight by Brandon Sanderson. I tried my reread a lot earlier this year so I could try to get to the 4th book, Defiant, which came out in 2024. Like I said, I need to redo this, but I just love Skyward and Starsight so much. They're my favorite books of the series so far. I just really enjoy Starsight. Like, this one gets me every time. I just love it so much. It is following Spensa, and she wants to be a fighter pilot for the DDF, like for her planet, to protect them. And we just basically get to see her struggle and try to save the world. Man, Spensa and like everyone is just my favorite. And there's slugs and AI ships. Mbot is my favorite. Like, I just love everything about that series. So I did reread it and I really enjoyed it. Next up, I would say the whole Thursday Murder Club is something I really enjoyed. This is by Richard Osman. This is following a group of like 70 to 80-year-olds. They all live in Cooper's Chase retirement home, and they love going over cold cases. But in the first book, a murder happens like on the property, and they like immediately get involved. They all have really unique backgrounds. They all come from different places in life and bring different skill sets. Like, the humors are really funny and cheeky. It's like British humor, so I would definitely recommend the audiobooks because it just like hits really good. The last book is really emotional. You just cover so many lovely things. You have just like the best friendships. Like, oh my god, I just really like this series a lot. Okay. Assassin's Apprentice and Assassin's Quest are also really enjoyed. Assassin's Apprentice, Assassin's Quest, and Assassin's Royal Assassin are all part of the Farseer trilogy. It's the first one in the realm of the Elderlings. So it's Farseer trilogy and then Liveship Traders trilogy. I really enjoyed the first book a lot and the last book a lot. We're following Fitz from like age 6 to 20 as he was a bastard child of the king, or the king in waiting, and he just gets like dropped off at the palace, and he has to like navigate being kind of important but also like not important because he's a bastard. Like, he's just in a very odd place. But I really liked the second book. Like, the second book just ends on like a fucking mic drop. The end of that second book was really cool, but his overall arc is really fascinating. But the second book, it was so good. It was so good. I love all of it, but just I got the chills when I finished that second book because like the last sentence was like, ah, it was so good. Okay, these are my books where like it was an experience. It was an experience reading. So the first one is Poor Dear by Claire Oshetsky. This is following a young girl who, I mean, it's really a grief story, honestly, at the end of the day. She had something happen when she was a child, like a very traumatic accident, happened to her best friend. And it is so horrific. Like, it's so awful what happens to her friend and what happens in her childhood. Like, it's a really hard read. But we get to see like what that event was, how the adults and specifically her mom responded to that event, what happened, and then how this grief follows her into young adulthood. And the grief is manifested as a deer in a bathrobe. Like, what? I just love it. Yeah, it just, what really stuck with me was just the thing that happened to her as a child. Like, what would that trauma be and feel like? And you get to see how the adults respond. And like, they just had such an opportunity to like care for her and nurture her, and they just like totally biffed it. And like, I don't know, I think it just like contributed to her carrying around this guilt in such a bad way. Like, but I just really liked it. It was so good. I highly like all of these. I really do recommend. Next up is A School for Good Mothers by Jessamine Chan. This book really stuck with me because of how frustrated I was. Oh my god, like, I was so frustrated, and I just really felt for our main character, and I was like pissed off with and for her. So this is following our main character. She's an older mother of a toddler, and she leaves her kid alone for a couple hours one day, and she gets caught. And the police and Child Protective Services take her kid away. She just jumps through hoop after hoop after hoop to try to get her child back, and none of it's good enough. And so she gets sent to the School for Good Mothers, and this school is fucking wild. Like, it is such a dystopian, wacky, weird school, and like the things they do are really messed up. There's a really fun thing that is like introduced at the school, and you're just like, what? But just like that sense, like that feeling of injustice and like, this is ridiculous, like the idea of like what makes a good and bad mom, like all of these things just like come into play, and I just really liked the book. It made me feel a lot of things. Next up is Lobfana by Otessa Moshfegh. This is taking place in like a medieval village over the course of like a couple seasons, and we follow the disfigured son of a shepherd, and everyone in this book is disgusting. Everyone in this book is fucked up. I just liked this medieval village vibe we were in. It's very cruel. It's very harsh. It's just such a wacky, weird story. I loved every second of it. I really enjoyed that one. Next up is Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. Update, I watched the movie. I thought it was fun. I thought it was well done, but they changed the ending. They changed it, and I'm so mad. So mad. I wanted the ending weirder, and they added something in that I just feel like it wasn't true to like the character we met in the book, in the movie, and her journey. I'm like, why'd you do that? But it was very funny, and I feel like it did just highlight some of the challenges mothers have and just parents in general. So like, I'd recommend the movie. The book, phenomenal. I love this book so much. I had never read a book like this before where it looked at motherhood in this way. I don't know, I feel like motherhood and just parenthood in general is like, oh my god, you'd be a great mom, you should have babies, you should do it. And then you like join the club and they're like, like, welcome to the dark side. It's fucking crazy here. And so in Night Bitch, you get to see a lot of the things she struggles with. And I really liked it. It had this weird artsy aspect to it. Like, she's turning into a dog. So like, it's just weird because you're like, what the fuck's going on? And then there's such a fun like twist in this book too that I just loved that they left out of the movie. Oh man. Anyways, I really, really loved Night Bitch. Next up is Tears of Amber by Sofia Segovia. This book was interesting because it was pretty good when I was reading it. Oh, I did an audiobook, I think. But the author's note was incredible. I highly recommend the author's note at the very end because it changes the entire context of the story. This is a World War II historical fiction, but we are following German families. And it was just, first of all, super fascinating to be following the Germans because you get to see them support Hitler. They're very excited for this. And then after a while, they're like, ooh, like, maybe not. And a lot of them suffered a ton too. Like, not all Germans are bad. Like, the characters we meet in the story, like, have great losses, great hardships and tragedy. Like, I mean, they're people too. And it just was a really beautiful story. We're following two families, Ilse and Arno, and they ultimately come together, and it was just so lovely. And then the author's note had me sobbing. It was amazing. It was so good. I highly recommend. Lastly, I feel like this one honestly does kind of take the top for me. No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood. I can't stop thinking about this book. I can't stop thinking about it. I want to reread it. This book is not going to be for everyone though, and I will admit, like, I didn't love reading it in general. Like, this book is about a social media influencer, and the book is written in like Twitter poetry, so it's very chaotic, it's very random, it references a lot of internet memes and things, and I'm like, I don't know what this is about, I don't know what you just said. So I just felt kind of dumb reading it because I didn't know a lot of those things. But then something happens where our main character gets called home by her mom. Her mom's like, something's wrong, how soon can you get here? And then the whole tone of the book shifts, and you get to figure out what no one is talking about. And it's just this really beautiful look at like social media being one thing, but like, what is life? Like, what is life and love and beauty? Like, those are the things no one's talking about. There is child loss in this book, which I was not expecting and could be a slight spoiler. However, like, that caught me off guard, and that was very hard to read about. But it was so beautiful. And when you get to the end of the book, you have to read the author's note. Like, the inspiration for the story is incredible. The way it was told, like, I'm sure there's so many more nuggets within the memes she picked. and just like commentary on social media. Like, oh my god, I just like, I can't stop thinking about it. I need everyone to read about it so we can talk about it. I've mentioned this before, but I did find an article that breaks down the memes in this book, so I will link that. I just think that would have been helpful to have the first time around. But yeah, oh my god, this book was so fucking good. I didn't like reading it, but then everything came full circle, and it's so good. That is it, you guys. That was my very crazy, delusional, delirious 2024 tier ranking. I've made it. It's 2 a.m. Like, hallelujah. So thank you so much for helping me stay awake. If you made it this far, I appreciate you so much. I can't wait to read a bunch of amazing books this year and do this again for 2025. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.